and every week as your host and moderator of these sessions. And, it really is something that all of us look forward to. So I'm glad you were able to make it today. We have another incredible session that I can tell is just going to be really insightful and could help people get through some specific circumstances when it comes to credit. So let me tell you about our speaker today. He is Kevin Laux, and the topic is the basics of credit repair. And his expertise is really quite vast. He's going to talk about personal credit repair, get a little bit into business credit and how that works as well. But it's always fun to hear about our speakers and a little bit about their personal lives before we dive in. But he's from New Iberia, Louisiana. He and his wife have been married for 22 years. They now live in North Texas. They have 3 kids, and fun fact, boy-girl twins are 2 of them. So I always think that's an interesting, family note. Also, his background, obviously, with what he's talking about today, is in the finance industry. So he worked for a number of different companies, auto finance industry companies like GM Financial for more than 8 years. And what he did there day in and day out was working as a senior credit analyst. So basically, he helped people to learn what kind of credit it takes in order to get approved. So you can imagine when somebody's working in that type of industry day in, day out, they're seeing all scenarios, right? Because most people at some point in time have to grab a car, right? For transportation and getting the family around. So he has seen all kinds of scenarios. He also has had a lot of experience in real estate, purchasing, flipping houses before the market crashed in 2008. So he has experienced those wild rides as well and can speak to that. He also really has a passion for helping to educate people about credit. He said that he truly believes that financial literacy is a pandemic in the US that continues to spread and is hurting families. So when somebody sees that hurt and they have a desire to make a change, I think that they're a really important person to hear from. So I am going to mute my line and let Kevin Laux take it away from here. And Kevin, I'll be here if you need me, but I'll be back for the Q&A. And don't forget, you guys, post your questions in the chat. All right, Kevin, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Jenny. I really appreciate it. Guys, so let's talk, man. Let's talk about credit repair, right? So as Jenny mentioned, I have a passion for this thing. Really just trying to help people to understand a lot about credit repair, because I truly believe credit is the gateway to wealth, right? And once you understand your credit, you can put yourself in a better position to create wealth, and that's through business opportunities, just personal wealth. So I think it all starts with credit. So let's get a chance to talk about it. I'm gonna get my man to flip to that first screen for me real quick. But just kind of talk a little bit more about the whole credit thing, man. The biggest thing about credit is people don't understand how credit truly works, and I think credit is an amazing thing that once you can better understand it and use it towards your advantage, that's some great things that you can actually do with your credit along the line. So a lot of people don't really deal with their credit until they actually have to use it. But I think while you're not using it, while you're not trying to purchase a house, a car, or start a business, or any type of financing, you should be working on your credit to make sure that when that time comes, that you are absolutely in the best position financially, and your credit worthiness is there, that you can get the best rates, save money in the long run. So credit, man, is really the name of the game when it comes to saving money, and then also building money in terms of wealth. So definitely credit is the key. So let's talk about it. How does credit repair work, right? So just so you know, man, there are federal laws, guys, that protect us as consumers to ensure that our personal information, our payment history, and all the things being reported to the third-party credit agencies are reported accurately at all times. So just know that, man, there's something out there for us, that's supporting us, that's backing us, that's making sure that we have rights when it comes to credit repair. So you're never out there alone. You just got to know your rights so that you can exercise your rights. So let's move to that next screen. All right, what are the 2 most common laws used in credit repair? We're gonna keep this thing moving, Raul. Go to that next screen. So there's 2 laws that we really can use to kind of really benefit everything that we do with credit. The first one is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Guys, make sure you know these acronyms, FCRA. This is super, super important, because this is the law that protects you and I as consumers when it comes to our credit report. So the federal law that helps us to ensure accuracy, fairness, privacy of information in consumer bureau files. The law regulates that the way that our credit report agencies collect, access, use, and share the data they collect in your credit report. So make sure that you know that the Fair Credit Reporting Act is on your side, and we can always use this to make sure and hold the TransUnion, the Equifax, and Experian. This is the law we use to hold those guys accountable to make sure that they're reporting everything on our files correctly. So there's another law. Let's go to the next one, Raul. So there's another law, and it's for FDCPA. So this is the main one as well. So I'm pretty sure we might have all been there. Maybe hopefully some of you haven't experienced this, but I'm sure many of us have, where we got that phone call from a debt collector trying to collect a debt, right? And we already know lots of times they're not as friendly when they're trying to do so. They're really aggressive, really, really pushing it to the edge to try to really collect that money. But the FDCPA, man, is a main federal law that governs debt collection companies. This basically prohibits debt collectors to basically use unfair, abusive, and deceptive practices when trying to collect a debt. So you got to really make sure that you understand your rights. So this is another one here that we use to kind of really help when we're fending off those debt collectors who are trying to just really be aggressive and obnoxious and nonstop. Oh my goodness, to really try to come and push forward to really try to collect that debt. So let's hit that next screen. So this is where I'm gonna bring in my girl Jenny. We're gonna play a little game. We're gonna do a little role play, me and Jenny. So Jenny, check it out. So the DC is gonna be debt collector. So this is, guys, I want you to understand. This is how you use the federal the debt collection, right? So when they calling you, when these debt collectors are calling you, this is the way how you can actually fight these guys off and kind of prohibit them from constantly bugging you and blowing your phone up, sending letters and all that stuff. So this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to go ahead on and be the DC. I'm the debt collector, Jenny, if you will, and
Okay.
you're going to be me. And you're
Okay.
going to be me. So, say for instance, here we go. I'm calling Jenny to collect a debt. This is the idea scenario that many of us probably have already faced. This is going to basically show you how to deal with that situations and exercising your rights at the same time when you do that, right? So here I go. Hi, I'm Kevin calling from ABC Debt Collect Debt Solution. Is this Jenny?
Can I ask what the nature of this call is, please?
Please be advised that this is an attempt to collect a debt, and I'm pretty sure we all heard this little phrase, right? This is an attempt to collect a debt, and any information obtained will be used for that purpose. And then you say,
Okay, yes, this is customer Jenny.
Jenny, right, right. And then we have a medical bill with a balance of $1,235.24. How will you be making that payment today?
I will not be making a payment today, but what I would like you to do is kindly send me a debt validation letter with any original documents from the original creditor that contains my signature of this alleged debt.
Beautiful. That is the key phrase right there, guys. So if a debt collector is calling you, go to you rocked it, Jenny. Way to go. So if a debt collector is calling you, that highlighted portion in blue is the key phrase that you must say to kind of prevent them from continuing to kind of harass you and bug you. Basically, you're just putting them on the hot seat because right there, it's an alleged debt. They don't really know 100%. It's an alleged debt that they're saying that they're trying to collect from you. So that phrase right there is something you want to make sure that you highlight, take a snapshot, do whatever you need to do. But remember that when you're getting those debt collectors calling you, right? So then now, as a debt collector, here I am. I'm saying, okay, do you still live at ABC 123 Street, Grand Prairie, Texas 90210? And then Jenny
Well,
says,
Kevin, you called me, so I assume you have my info. So I'll wait for the letter in the mail. Thank you and have a great day. Click.
that's it. Click. That's it, right? So we don't really need to have an attitude with these people. We don't really need to be, just kind of just bad mouthing them. There's no need for that. Just know your laws, know your rights as a consumer. That way you can fight these guys off and without even breaking a sweat. All right. So the main thing, the very bottom line, do not verify any other information when they're talking to a debt collector. You don't have to verify your address, the debt amount. Please don't do any of that. just let them know that, hey, send me the information on this alleged debt, and then we'll go from there. So that's how you handle that. So next screen. All right, why do people need credit repair? Guys, it just seemed like a no-brainer, but just we're gonna run through it real quick. We're gonna flip to the next screen real quick. But to buy a house, buy a car, start a business, that might be you. You may not be trying to buy a house, but maybe you're trying to buy a car. If you're not trying to buy a car, maybe you're trying to start a business. Maybe you need funds for, vacation, credit cards, your job. Man, even these days, they pull your credit before you even get a job. So, guys, it's super, super important. Your credit runs the world, man. Everything that has to do with you and trying to make money and finances and gain is going to be linked to your credit. So make sure you're on top of that. Benefits of credit, obviously, you can save money with low interest rates, no money down, and you just basically get better terms and conditions all day long. So make sure that your credit is on point. So maybe if you do need to buy a house, right, you definitely need good credit to buy a house. So we're going to keep it moving. So, what is the Fair Isaac? Back one. What is the? You didn't give him the answer. What is the Fair Isaac Corporation, also known as? Oh, this was a little test. That's okay, but we're gonna give you the answer. Go down and hit it, Raul. So, the Fair Isaac Corporation is also known as the FICA score, right? Most people just know it as FICA, but there's history behind this thing. So, the FICA is just a good acronym. It's just basically for the Fair Isaac Corporation. All right. So let's move on. So what normally happens? Let's say this is you. This happens all the time. You as a customer, you when you want to look at your credit report, most of the time you go into something like a Credit Karma, right? You just trying to get that quick free credit report just to kind of get a quick snapshot of what's going on. And this is what's happening, right? Customer be like this guy right here. He look at Credit Karma, 700 credit score. So he like, yes, let's go. I want that house. I want that car. I want whatever it is. Because he's thinking he has a 700 score. But that's on Credit Karma. But now when he submits it to the bank, flip that screen. This is what the reality of it is. Now the loan officer would be like this, right? Like, oh my God, his FICO score is 740. So why is the gentleman, right? He pulled Credit Karma. He looking at 700 on Credit Karma. So he submits it to the loan officer, to the bank, to the institution where he's trying to get financing. And they're looking like, oh my God, this is 570 FICO score, because there's two different systems that they're using to look at when you're trying to get this credit score and understand what's going on. So flip that next screen. Let's talk about that, right? So have you ever had to explain the difference between the two? This is was a little seminar I was doing. So how do you explain the difference between the two? Credit Karma versus a FICO score. Maybe if you guys are in the chat, I like to be a little, interactive. Maybe post your comments in the chat now. Maybe Jenny could just kind of look at them a little quick. What's the difference between Credit Karma and a FICO score? What's the difference? Because there is a major difference in the two. And most people kind of defer towards the Credit Karma, that free version of a quick snapshot of your credit score, your credit report, and things of that nature. While on the other hand, banks, major financial institutions are looking at that FICO score on the other end. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's go to the next screen. Guys, FICA versus your Credit Karma, or which is also Vantage Score. So there's a major difference in the weight that they look at these things. So in the FICA score, where they are heavily weighted on some items, the Vantage score is not as weighted on some items. So let's say, for instance, like medical bills are one thing, right? That some institutions they look at a little bit heavy, where maybe Vantage might not, like, we're not really tripping on medical bills, delinquencies, and things of that nature. But late payments on a house, a car, those are your major big things that you normally would purchase. That's the major investment. Those things are weighed very heavy on in some score models, but then on some score models, it just maybe the history. If you paid something for a long period of time, pretty decent, you got one or two lates on it, it weighs a little bit different. So let's look at this, the 5 factors. You got, say, for instance, if you look at the FICO score, right, the pie graph at the bottom left hand on the screen, you see the payment history. On the FICO score, they weight at it about 35% of your entire FICO score. But if you look at Vantage, right, in terms of payment history, the bottom right, that's about 40%. So that 5% difference weighs a little bit heavier on Vantage than it does on a FICO score. So they're looking at that payment history a little bit more intent, right? So these things are kind of the factors that just kind of determine how your overall score is going to rate based on which scoring model that they are using. So once again, Credit Karma, that's your free version. It weighs a little bit different. Just always keep in mind your major banks that you're going to be dealing with is always going to be using the FICO score because that's the main scoring system that most financial institutions are using today. So hopefully that makes sense in how they weigh the different things, the different variables of all the things that can composite of your credit score. Let's hit that next screen. So same idea here, guys. This is just a pie graph with numbers, just to kind of give you a little bit more visibility on what that looks like, right? So those factors that kind of weigh in on your score. If you look in, let's just take a look into the red. Let's go straight to the 300 to 579 on FICA. But once again, on Vantage, it's 300 to 549. So they once again they cut it off at 549, where FICA goes all the way up to 579. So there are different variables, right? They look at things a little bit different. So once again, you got one credit score, you look at it Advantage, Credit Karma saying yes, and then you got FICO score be like no, right? So those are the difference why you can come sometime think your credit score is one thing, in all actuality is something different, totally different with a different model, right? So two different models. So next screen. So, scores for a mortgage. So, if you are one that's out there that's trying to maybe purchase a home sometime soon, oh my God, the rates are climbing up there, man. If you haven't purchased or refinanced or did anything at this point, you probably missed out on a huge opportunity to save a lot of money and potentially get in a great situation in the mortgage game. But we already know inflation is here. We all feeling it. So a lot of us probably have missed out on a lot of those rates, but that's okay. So let's talk about most home mortgage lenders. They're using new mortgage loans and refinancing existing mortgages. Use specific versions of the standard FICA. So there are different FICA scores. So say for instance, like a 2020 model Lexus. Let's just say, just for an example, every few years, right, they get a different model of a Lexus. Then in a few more years, and there's a different model. The scoring system is the same thing. So FICA 2, there used to be, that's based on experience. Experience is one that used FICA score 2. But then there's also FICA 5, which Equifax use a little bit more heavily. You got FICA 4, TransUnion use that a little bit. Then there's also 8. So it continues to go on and on. Now we're even up to FICA 10, 10T, right? So we're in a whole different game right now. And 10T is a little bit different. I think it's going to be maybe potentially a little bit more favorable to a lot of people, especially with the medical bills and things like that. But for the most part, you have to understand that there are different levels and models of the FICA. And you got to understand we're dealing with three different credit bureaus and they all use different ones. So if they got so many models, they all using different ones, it can really kind of get a little confusing, maybe even a little discouraging because you're trying to understand your credit report and what's going on, but you got all these different models. And then you also have these three different bureaus who are also looking at three different models. So that's can be a frustrating thing, but at the same time, once you know it and understand it, then you can better understand your situation, what you need to do to put yourself in a great situation to get approved. So, and we're moving on. So, real quick, because I know not everybody may not be trying to purchase a home right now, but I definitely want to kind of brush up on it right now a little bit. Some mortgage services providers, such as the FHA, provide general guidelines for those with credit scores on the lower end. FHA mortgage loans require a minimum of about a 580. So determining on where your credit score is right now, FHA mortgages they require about a minimum of about a 580 or higher with about a 3.5 down payment. Right now, guys, this could change because the mortgage industry has been changing almost every week. Seems like lately. So this stuff can be already outdated because things are constantly changing, but it kind of gives you a ballpark and maybe just a visual understanding of how this works and kind of what you need to do. So in the very bottom, myfico.com. Guys, I highly recommend. It shows you the most, if not all, scores, which is what we would recommend using the FICA to track your credit scores. Credit Karma is not the way to go if you're trying to purchase something major. I just purchase anything at all, really. If you want the most accurate information on your credit scores, your FICA is what you want to be using, what you want to look at to make sure that it's in a line. That way, you're looking at the same thing that the financial institutions are looking at, right? So just make sure that myfica.com is what you want to do. You pay a little bit money for that, but it's well worth it when you're trying to make a major purchase somewhere down the line. So, and next screen. All right, derogatory accounts on your credit report. What are some derogatory accounts that most of us see on our credit report? Let's talk about it. Next screen. So we got many different things, right? With credit repair, right? So paying off collections. Um, what do you think? You think that paying off collections is a good thing? Is a bad thing? Put that in the chat. Let us know. You think can you pay off collections? Raise your hand if you think it's a good thing to pay off collections. Let us know. Let us know. Give you just a quick little something in the chat. Let us know. All right.
They're
While you
being
do that,
quiet.
let's go to that.
They're being
They're
quiet in
being
the
quiet.
chat, but I'm with you. Yeah,
Oh,
sometimes they're
oh,
quiet, sometimes they're, listening and working and that kind of stuff.
okay. All right. Good deal. Good deal. Well, hit that next screen. We're gonna keep it moving now. If they're not raising their hand, at least you're thinking about it, guys. Thinking about it just so you kind of understand and know what's going on. So, the next thing, will my credit improve if I paid my collection accounts? That's a major question. I get that a lot. If I pay this account off, most people because not everybody who has credit issues are financially, um, struggling. There's a lot of people that actually make pretty good money, and and their credit is still struggling, and that's a different problem. Now you're talking about more of a money management problem as opposed to someone who's maybe not paying the bills. They just don't know how to manage their money. They got the money, they can pay the bills, but they're just mismanaging the money, not keeping a accurate account of what they're spending versus bringing in. So that's a different situation. But I do get that question a lot. Will my credit improve if I pay off an account? So if you ever receive a phone call, if you ever receive a phone call or a letter from a debt collector, you know it can be stressful. Debt collectors attempt to collect money owed. While paying or selling for collection accounts may certainly look better to future lenders, there's no guarantee that your score will improve as a result. So even though you pay something off, guys, here's the thing: I never really recommend any of my clients to pay a debt off, not to pay it off, unless it is the absolute last resort. It has to be a last resort because the biggest thing for me, especially any credit repair person who really has your best interest at heart, we're going to fight this thing before you actually spend money, right? To actually spend on some type of old debt or that you're trying to pay something off. So we definitely want to make sure that we're going to always try to fight it and dispute it before we just start kicking out and saving your money. I want you to have your money. Keep your money in your pocket. I don't know about you, but I like money in my pocket as opposed to paying it to a debt collector, right? So the next paragraph says when you pay or settle collections and go back to when I was just on. So when you pay or settle a collection and it is updated, reflected, reflected on a balance on a credit report, your FICA 9, your Vantage score 3.0 and 4.0 scores may improve. However, because older scoring models do not ignore paid collections, scores generated by these old models will not improve. Most lenders, especially mortgage lenders, use older models of credit scoring models, which means even if you think paying a collection will help your score increase, that is not true. And unless it return to the company deletes it from your credit report. So Paying off a debt does not equate to better credit. Paying off your debt does not equate to better credit. You have to understand that if you're going to really pay off a debt, it's a last resort, and there's a way that you should also try to settle for pennies on the dollar, so you don't have to pay that full amount, right? You want to settle for pennies on the dollar, which is paid for a deletion. So if I pay this amount, I can pay this amount, but if I do pay it, I need you to delete it off my credit report. So that's the main thing. That's the tactic that most credit repair companies use, because most of the time paying it off and your that negative account still on your credit report, it doesn't help your credit score, because the negative account is still there. It shows just as a paid negative account. That's it, just a paid negative account. But if you delete it completely, now it's completely wiped off of your credit, and now that continues to help your score to soar. So just understand that just by paying it off is not enough. You have to get it deleted if they're going to pay for it, and make sure that you negotiate a less amount before you kick out any money. You can do that because they're willing to do it. All right. So next screen. So, can you remove paid collections from your credit report? While the FCRA, remember that was the law that protects us, right? Fair Credit Act allows collections to be reported for up to 7 years. There is no requirement that a debt collector or a credit reporting agency have to remove a collection simply because it has been paid. You have the right to dispute that information with the credit bureau and have it corrected or removed if it is proven to be inaccurate. So once again, credit repair companies, especially mine, we focus mainly on looking for inaccuracies on credit reports, right? We're looking for things that may be old, that should have already passed the statute of limitation, right? There's a certain time frame where things are supposed to fall off, and if they haven't, we can dispute that. There are many things that we look at. You may have an old address that you've been living at, that you were living at when you was a kid, and you no longer live there anymore, but you had a bad debt, maybe one bad credit card when you was living, at mom's house, right? When you was an early age, early teenager. Now that bad debt is there, and that actual address is still on there as well, but you've been gone for like 10, 15 years. You're on your own now, right? So you need to update that personal information, because that's linked to that bad debt, right? So even your personal information, there's nothing, and we're going to get a little bit more into this. There's nothing that you cannot dispute on your credit report. Make sure that you're looking at your credit report. Pull the annual report where you know every year going into the year, like right now, we're in December. Do you know what your credit report looks like? Do you know what your scores look like? Do you know which each bureau is reporting on your credit report? Do you know? You have to know this stuff, man. You got to know where you at to know where you're going. So just make sure that you're up to date on your credit profile. That will help you in the long run, just knowing your status. So next screen. So pay off or settle, right? We just kind of talked. We ain't gonna be on the screen a lot. I talked about it a little bit. I went into it on the last screen, but selling for old bills that went into collections can help improve your ability to qualify for loans. If you have unpaid collections on your credit report, once again, unpaid collections on your credit report, you may need to pay them to qualify for a home loan. Some mortgage lenders, they want to see certain things. Remember, we talked about it, the different weight on things, right? So if they're putting a certain credit score, or using a certain credit model, right, that's real heavy on certain debts, say for instance like a medical debt, right, but you got an unpaid collection of debt that's been sitting on there for maybe 10, 15 years. Even though it's an old debt, it's probably something you didn't forgot about, but even if it's on there and it's unpaid, a mortgage company can come back and say, hey, we will not approve this thing until this particular debt is paid. So you may have to go back and pay some of this old debt. But once again, make sure you use the same tactic we just talked about, and trying to negotiate for a less amount, pay a less amount, and then also a pay for deletion is the way you want to do that. So negotiating for a lower payment, once again, off the balance is common. Paying old collection balance in full can be a lengthy process. if the amount is large, which is why most people negotiate a lower payoff amount to help resolve it a lot sooner. So, and then that last bullet point, it just says if you decide to pay it off, but want to see if you can settle for less amount, which is everything that I've already kind of told. I kind of know these screens already. I'm kind of telling it to you before I even get to the screen. I just know that's just how it works, man. You just have to know how to use this knowledge and apply it in a way that's going to benefit you in the long run, right? So let's go to that next screen. All about disputing. So now we understand some of our rights. We understand who helps us and protect our rights, right? The FCRA, and also you got the FDCPA, right? These guys help us. They support us. We understand that we're going to pay some stuff off if it's old. We understand that we don't want to pay it in full. We want to try to challenge it first, right? And that's what we're getting into now. How do you dispute these things? So all about disputing. We're going to talk about that next. Let's go to that next slide. So, what can be disputed on my credit report? Once again, I kind of brushed up on it. Anything, everything on your credit report can be disputed. So, anything listed on your credit report can be disputed if you have an account with a lender on your credit report you feel is incorrect in any way, such as an amount they say is owed, the name of the creditor, which is also another common issue because lots of times they sell those credits off to a third party. So now it's a different name, right? So the open date could be an issue that you can dispute. If the open date on your file is wrong, you have no idea who the company is, you can dispute all these things. You can file a dispute with a credit reporting agency in which the information appears. You can also dispute inaccurate personal information such as the name, misspelling, or address, which is, all stuff, man, that you can do just by knowing and being familiar with what's on your credit report. You have to know what's on there to know that if some of this stuff is reporting incorrect, on your credit report. So this is the biggest thing, guys. Please understand the biggest thing that help people to get in a better situation with their credit is just disputing inaccurate information that's on their credit report. It may not be it may be something that's 30 days past due, or maybe 60 days. You might have a little bit issue maybe in the past, but if you just kind of knock out some of the things that just simple, the no brainers, incorrect spelling, incorrect amounts and dates. If you can just start there, that can make the world of a difference, and that can automatically increase your scores just by doing that. Before you get to all the negative accounts and stuff like that. So just be mindful of that. Next screen. Personal information. We talked about it, guys. Remove that stuff, man. You should not have anything on your account that's not accurate of where you live right now. So you say, for instance, you've been living at your new house for 2, 3, 4 years now, but on your credit report, there's still that previous address, and maybe even a few more addresses that you lived out in the past, going all the way back to when you used to live with your mama, right? You want to get rid of all those addresses. You only want one address on your credit bureau, and that is the one where you currently live now. So just make sure, and that's the same thing with a job, your where you live. Make sure that is all current. You don't need a whole bunch of stuff on your credit report. That's inaccurate reporting. You can delete that stuff, and that they shouldn't have any questions about deleted and stuff like that. So knock that stuff out and get that stuff off of there. So next, credit inquiries. We already know about them, right? Maybe you try to apply for some credit somewhere. Maybe regardless if you got approved or denied, but it is going to show up as an inquiry. So there's hard inquiries and there's soft inquiries, right? So soft inquiries, man, most of the time they let you know if it's a soft inquiry because soft inquiry basically means that they'll take a quick little snapshot to kind of see what's going on your credit, right? Kind of look for a few things, but it really won't even show up on your credit report. Soft credit pulls, that's no problem. You don't have any issues because that won't affect your credit one way or the other. However, if you're looking to do something a little bit more definite, you're trying to buy that house, that car, or you're trying to get that loan, Now you go into a major institution, they're going to do a hard inquiry, and that will show up on your credit report. Here's the thing: what I noticed, a lot of people, if you're already if you're struggling with your credit report already, your scores are not as high as they need to be. Remember, there are 5 different factors that make up your credit score, right? So the payment history, the inquiries, new credit, all these credit utilization, right? All these things, and credit inquiry is one of them. So if you're going to be pulling your credit, please know that every time you do it and it's a hard inquiry, that will affect your credit. It will affect your credit. Once again, it's about being disciplined. It's about knowing how to use your credit, knowing when to use your credit, and make it work for you. Don't be trying to use your credit to get money and to try to do this for things that don't make sense. Make sure that you understand your credit to a point where you make your credit works for you. That's it. I'm telling you, that's how you got to do this thing. So hard inquiries, I definitely say you definitely have to, you can use it, but just make sure that your credit is in a good enough position to where when you do pull that hard inquiry, you already know that you're gonna get approved, and it should be just one ding on your credit that shouldn't really affect you. Again, one last thing to note about inquiries is 2 years max on your credit report. After 2 years, these inquiries should fall off of your credit report. That's another thing that we look at to make sure that there are no old inquiries that should have fell off a long time ago on your credit report, because those inquiries could still potentially be hurting your credit, and it should not even be there from the first place. So next screen. Charge-offs, man, we kind of know about them. I'm gonna make it real simple. We know charge-off is basically if you haven't paid a bill in 180 days, it becomes a charge-off. That's pretty simple, right? If you haven't paid a bill within 180 days, now it's to the point where it becomes a charge-off. The actual financial institution begins to look at that debt and say, you know what? We might as well write this thing off. There's no way that, Kevin is going to pay this debt. It's a loss. So instead of me continuing to pay taxes on this debt, because I'm paying taxes on it because they're carrying that debt, instead of paying taxes, we're going to write it off, right? Charge it off. And then they send it to a third party. And that's when that third party, they buy this debt. And that's when you start getting these phone calls saying, hey, we want to collect on this debt, yada, yada. The same little script that Jenny and I went through. That's when that comes into play, right? Because the major institution got rid of it because they didn't want to continue to pay taxes on that debt. So they charged it off. So, and next screen. Jenny, how we doing? We rocking and rolling? We doing good?
This is amazing. I'm learning a lot. Yes, you're doing great. We still have 20 minutes in the session, so keep going and we'll do Q&A whenever you're done.
Sounds good. Bankruptcies. Let's talk about it, guys. Bankruptcies and judgments, man. Public record stuff, right? So now we get a little bit more into, some of the big things, right? A bankruptcy, man, it hurts you, man, it hurts you like nothing else, right? But at the same time, bankruptcies, I think bankruptcies have a bad rep because they really affect you short term, but long term, there's some benefits to a bankruptcy. So it just, once again, will I ever suggest or recommend someone to go bankruptcy route? Probably not, because you don't really want to affect your credit if you really truly feel like we can save it. Because I think if you can do a few things, you can really save your credit. But the biggest thing about it is you got to make sure that you get into understand, and you work your money and you let your money work for you, and stop trying to do things where you're just spending that money. If you get smart about how you spend your money, how you use your money, I promise you, you can make your money work for you. That way, you're not working so hard for it. So, but we know that bankruptcy is a thing. So, public records can include details of a bankruptcy filings, records, tax liens, monetary judgments. They will remain on your credit report from 7 to 10 years. And I say 7 to 10. Why? Because it's based on whatever state you live in. It could be a little bit longer. So from state to state, it kind of varies. I don't know all the limits in every state, but I know from 7 to 10 years is kind of where most states kind of fall in between that range right there for how long it can stay on your credit. So next slide. Repossessions, once again, another ugly situation that sometimes you just can't prevent it. It happens. Repossessions notes a seize of any assets, right, which is normally your car, due to a late or delinquency payment. It will remain on your credit and impact, once again, 7 years. A repo can stand on there. Once you submit your dispute, if the data furnisher discovers that they are reporting incorrect information on the credit reporting agency, they must correct it or delete it. Check it out, man. Even a repo can be deleted from your report through a credit repair process if there's some inaccurate information. So you might be sitting with a repo that's been sitting there for years and just kind of really hurting your credit. If there's some things that's inaccurate about how this is reported, how they're reporting it on your bureau, man, it can potentially be deleted off of your credit report. Once again, you just got to know the rules and regulations on how to make it work for you. Next slide. All right, what's the best way to file? So we're gonna try to run through this real quick. I'm gonna just kind of freestyle this one a little bit. The best way to file, man, a dispute is definitely. Well, let's talk about maybe the best way not to file. So let's go to that next screen. Let's do this. We're gonna speed it up a little bit. What is the worst way to file a dispute, guys? Reason number one, you definitely don't want to do file through their little online portal where you go to Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion, and you go through their little disputing process on their website. That is one of the worst ways to file a dispute, and the reason being is because once you go to their little portal and you file that way, now you have no paper trail of what has happened with that filing. So now, if there's anything that ever comes back and you say, hey, because once again, if you know your laws based on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the credit reporting agencies have a certain amount of time that they need to respond to you, which is used to be 30 days, but I think now it's like about 45 days based on everything that's been happening. They got 45 days to respond to you. And if they don't, man, now the power is in your hand, right? So if you file through their little mechanical thing on the back end, there's no paper trail. But if I file on my own, a different way where I'm sending letters, now I got a paper trail that I can submit back to someone and say, hey, I filed this letter on this date and it's been this amount of time and I have not received a response, right? So now you got proof, you got your paper trail, and that's power right there when you can keep track of your efforts to try to get some of this stuff removed, right? So, and next screen. What is the worst way to dispute it? Oh, another way, calling on the phone. Calling on the phone. So that's another way you just don't want to do it. Once again, no paper trails, pretty simple. You don't know what's going to happen. You can have a conversation. They can say what they're going to say. You're going to say what you're going to say. But at the end of the day, it's he say, she say type stuff. And you don't want that because there's no paper trail on that. So next screen. All right, guys, real quick. So this is just kind of how some of the disputes that I normally work with, right? Kind of how it kind of looks. Once again, this you got your Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, right? Sometime when we're disputing this stuff, you can see how some scores may go up, some scores may go down a little bit. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is they all using different models, different systems. So, but you definitely just want to always see an increase on all three. Next screen. Right. So real quick, I'm gonna run through this, man. This is something, say for instance, you might have different accounts. So you might have one account that's reporting on one bureau and nothing reporting on the other, right? So that same one account might show on Equifax as you see here, and then nothing is reporting on Experian or TransUnion. So that's very common. So once again, different scoring models, they all using different things. So it's a whole like little web that's going on, right? Different systems they use to kind of determine how they're going to grade your score. Some of them put a little bit more weight on it on certain things than others. This is why you might get a situation like this. And next screen. And you can just go to the next one. I think we're almost just about done. And flip it one more time. And we are done, man. So that's kind of I kind of went through it in a nutshell, kind of really sped it up a little bit, but I hope that I got my point across with you guys to understand that, man, credit is power. If you use it, make sure that you use it where it's working for you, not against you. So anyway, if you know where you at, you can always come up with a game plan to get in a better situation if you know your laws and how to protect yourself and what works for you to get all this stuff done. So, Jenny, what you got?
That was awesome, Kevin. I definitely learned a lot. I mean, you definitely seem to be an expert in your field, and I would have done things wrong if, I had been in that scenario. So thank you so much for that. Now,
Absolutely.
we went back, I'm going back through some of my notes from earlier. When we send that validation letter, or when we were sort of doing that role play, right, about being polite and but still just giving these few specific answers, not necessarily validating an address, but saying, can you please send me the letter with my signature on it? What does that do? Does that just delay, or what does that do for somebody?
What it does, it puts the burden of proof in their hands, right? So they're calling you saying, "Hey, this is the debt that we have," right? And normally when these people call, Jenny, it's usually a third party, right? Third party company because the main institution already didn't charge it off and they sold it to this little third party, right? So in between, think about it, in between that major bank transferring all that file and paperwork to the now third party, it's very possible something got lost, something got missed, something was incorrect. So it's really now I'm putting that proof of burden on that third party to prove to me that everything that they're saying is correct. And I'm looking for any little holes that, like, no, this ain't right, this ain't right. Because just that one little piece of information that they can be reporting incorrect can validate me to get this thing deleted and I never have to worry about it again.
Okay, got it. So it's possible that just because they're not gonna have it, then they'll
Not
have
going
to
to have
delete.
it. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, what about a scenario where they're not in big credit card debt, but they, pay their credit card off every month, but then they just forget one month and they're like, oh my gosh, I had a big balance on there. I forgot to pay. My card shut down. Then how does that impact somebody's credit over the long term? Or does it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So definitely, anytime you're 30 days late on, even though you had a great history, as soon as you hit that first 30-day late, it's going to have an impact for sure. But here's the thing: typically, a lot of people don't really dig a little bit deep into. If you're just late one time and you've had a great track record with that financial institution, you'll be surprised with a letter to the owner of the company, to the institution, a phone call, a little hardship letter can definitely, man, make a big difference with a 30-day late because usually they'll be willing to work with you, especially if they know that you've been a great, customer for up for years and years, and you made that one mistake. Usually, you can get that thing removed if you just by reaching out to them and just being kind and just make sure, man. Just you never want to get. Let me just use the word ignorant. You never want to get to a point where you're going back and fussing and you're fighting with these people. Man, just show these people respect. Just keep in mind they're just doing their job. They're just doing what they was paid to do. Show them respect. Go at them in a way that you just really just, hey, I made a mistake. Can you help me out? Right? And you'll be surprised what a little gratitude, a little grace do for you in the long run.
Yeah, that's good life advice and advice for
Sure.
this particular scenario in general,
Absolutely.
right? So
Absolutely.
if somebody had that happen, do they need to panic, like think, oh gosh, I need to put off buying that car I was going to buy? I mean, how big of a drop can like a one-time thing like that, make?
Right. Right. So man, it's a wide scale. Depending, is your mortgage that you were 30 days late? It was your car, or was it a little 20, $2,000 credit card that you missed a 15? So the weight of each account weighs a whole lot different in terms of how many points it can hurt. But at the same time, I think once again, even if you're 30 days late, the most current 30 days late is the ones that's going to hurt you the most. So only thing that can really rectify those situations is time, right? So make sure if you made the attempt to reach out to the financial institution and they just didn't want to work with you for whatever reason to help you with that 30-day late, no problem, man. Just make sure that you stay on point with everything else. And as time passes, your scores will be right back on point and where they need to be. So it can make a significant drop in your scores, but once again, it depends on what type of account it is that you were 30-day late on. That really determines the weight of how many points you're going to lose out on that.
It's just like life too. Time heals sometimes, right? You gotta
Deals,
just let
time
the
deals.
time pass. I'm
Absolutely.
I'm curious to know how being in this profession and learning about this has changed the way that your own personal habits and the way that you operate with regard to credit.
Well, Jenny. Hey, you about to go in a whole other realm right now, girl, asking me this question. So, because the reason why I say that though, Jenny, because this year for me personally, this is just me personally. I've been on a personal development journey this year, right? 2022 for me has been about personal development, and I think there's a lot of things that that I've looked at now. I see things differently the way I look at them. In that terms of like debt, I'm gonna try to make it. I'm trying to reference it to what the point is, what we're talking about, but grace and being grateful for a lot of things that go on in my life, and that's the challenges as well. So maybe you're going through a hard time, hardship, whatever it is. Maybe you're going through that, man, because that's something you have to learn in that process, right? Maybe you're going through a test because that's something you have to learn. And then I think if you just remember that no matter what you're going through, it can always be worse. It can always be worse. So no matter what your financial situation is, if you're going through marital stuff, whatever, anything that you can think of in life, man, just receive it, accept it as something that I'm gonna learn from, right? Anything that you go through, you grow through. So you got to understand that, man, life is gonna happen no matter what. And then whatever it throws at you, just make sure that you always remain grateful, humble, and that you just make sure that you try to learn the lesson that you went through, and that way you can always be better. Because anytime you learn something, you should be able to do a little bit better, just because of that new knowledge that you now have. So anyway, that's my short answer for it, Jenny.
I love it. So you mentioned this part, and it stuck with me because I'm like, well, this is counterintuitive, saying to not pay all the debt off, right?
Yes.
Can you go further into that in terms of why not? Because I think most people that be think this is like the monkey on my back, this is weighing me down. I want to just pay it off by whatever means possible and move on with my life. Explain why you wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, you definitely, because man, cash is king, and the biggest thing that you want to do is we want to try to hold on to our money. We don't want to spend a whole lot of money and just pay all these debtors. Now, say for instance, if I just say the biggest investment we would all make is buying a house. If I got to pay all this debt to get into this house, now let's just say I'm paying $10,000, $15,000 to get rid of some debt, but now I also got to pay my down payment on this house. But now I may not even have the down payment or whatever. I'm short because I didn't pay all this debt off. I think debt is one of those things, man, where if you first of all, you have to dispute it. My biggest thing is try to keep your money in your pocket. Don't pay it off, because at the same time, paying it off doesn't guarantee that it's going to help your credit score. That's why I don't want you to pay it off, because even if you pay it off, you spend all this money. That's not guaranteed that your credit scores are going to increase. So the biggest thing is to say, let's fight it. Let's see if we can go around it, even if we have to pay it. That's why I said in the beginning, paying debt off is really like the very, very last option for me. Because if you want to get in the house and it's preventing you from getting a house, then let's talk about it. But if I don't necessarily have to pay it off, no, we're going to fight it. We're going to dispute it, and just you got to have faith that you're going to continue to fight it. Because lots of times, sometimes when we're disputing things, it seems like it's not happening, and then all of a sudden, Jenny, it'll just fall off. You're like, wow, right? So you just got to have faith that I'm gonna just continue to fight. And I think a lot of credit bureaus, there are tactics. I need people to understand there are stall tactics that these credit bureau agencies use to try to discourage you from continuing to dispute and continuing to fight. Credit repair is not an overnight thing, right? Just like weight, people want to lose weight, what I'm saying, overnight. You didn't gain that weight overnight. It's going to take some time. Credit repair is the same thing. It takes some time. And I think that a lot of people just give up the fight, and that's where they lose, and the credit agencies win. You got to stay in the fight.
No, I think that's such an interesting perspective. Do they ever do a scenario where they say, okay, just pay off the money. You don't have to pay off the interest. Because for some people, it's like they didn't even charge that much to begin with, but the interest rate perhaps was so high that it's really
Mhm.
sort of snowballed. Is that ever something that could be negotiated?
Absolutely. I think it all depends on what that financial institution is willing to, you and the financial institution is willing to negotiate, right? And I think that can be a part of the negotiations. But then again, Jen, it turns into how much the debt is, how long has it been, right? So it's so many variables in those type of negotiations. But that is definitely a scenario that can be negotiated if they're both parties are willing to look at that as an option, for sure.
Now, if people are interested in getting in touch with you, or if they're, watching right now or listening and finding themselves in a scenario where they're just like, gosh, I think I need to dive deeper into this. I'm ready to tackle this. What should they do?
I would just say, man, just shoot me an email. Let me know that this is the platform that they may have, heard or seen me from, and it just Kevin, my first name at Team Locks Credit Repair. So yeah, I think just reaching out, let me know that this is the platform they heard me in, and I can, maybe schedule a call or two and just kind of see how we can help them out. And I'm big on if it's a situation that for whatever reason that I feel like I can help you out. I normally team up with other credit repair agencies, and we kind of, join forces together and kind of see how we can better, help our clients. So yeah, absolutely.
So, Kevin, I put it in the chat, Kevin at teamlockscreditrepair.com. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, Jenny. You got it.
Kevin, you were super interesting, entertaining. I learned a lot. I feel like my eyes have been opened to a whole new world. So, thank you so much for the time today.
Absolutely, Jen. It's been a pleasure. Great to meet you. And man, let's go 2023. We got this.
We've got this. What a great way to sort of kick off December for all of us. So, for more information on Sarah's programs, visit sarah-national.org. Also, this might be one where you want to go back and see that script again, or go back and get the contact info again. This entire session is going to be out on Sarah's YouTube channel. If you want to sort of like let yourself be reimmersed, or perhaps you have somebody, a loved one, a friend, a colleague who could use this information, it's going to be on the YouTube channel. It's free for everybody to watch. And again, this is, it's information that a lot of people wait on hold for a long time for. So we were able to have that gift today from Kevin. So thank you all for being here. I will see you. Wait, will I see you next week? Hold on, hold on, hold on. Was this our last one of the year? I think this is our last session of the year. Oh my goodness. Okay, then I guess I will get to see you all in 2023. So this is a perfect way to wrap up. Don't forget to save the date for the annual conference and STEM Day. It's Creating Gateways to Economic Equity. Save the date, May 3rd and 4th in Plano, Texas. And we will see you all there. And I will see you in 2023. I cannot wait. Bye, everybody.